Hey, it's Darren with ArbitrageTrade, and it is time for Deep Dive with none other than Daniel Hopwood. He's the one in the bottom right corner. And this week, I guess he got
Darren,
over
have
there
you
in
ever
Asia.
thought about announcing horse racing? Because the way you started that, you're like, "Welcome back to another," and I'm like,
That's
"What?"
right. Here comes Nelly, and she's coming around the track, and the dogs are on. All right. No, no, that's not what I'm doing. Maybe I'm just
Okay.
so pumped up about talking about China and a subject you bring from your part of the world. I know you're not in China, but you're in Asia.
I
So,
was gonna
um,
say.
and he may. I mean, just blink twice if you're being forced to cover this subject. All right. He did not blink any. Very good. Very good job. They trained you well when asked that question. All right. So your title of your blog this week is how the Xi put is driving China's market rally in 2025. And we keep hearing about these rallies and they keep happening and they happen for a couple of days. This one stuck a little longer than it normally does. So maybe it's for real. Um, Maybe people are buying in until he locks up some of the company executives again. So kind of give us an overview of what this blog is about.
Yeah, so this blog is really, China at the beginning of the year said that they're pushing forward with a 5%, I believe, GDP growth rate, right? Which is really quite high considering how the world is. And I believe last year they only hit 3%. Um, so it's a decently ambitious goal considering that they kind of have like a housing bubble. Their economy wasn't, very stable. Their equities have been really down over the past, what, 3 years, I think, or more.
At least,
Um,
yeah, at least.
so, for them to set this kind of, we'll call it unprecedented growth target, it really shows of what G is now going to have to do to make those things happen, considering, let alone tariffs, just global chaos, right? So everyone
Mhm.
is kind of factoring this in, calling it now the G put, right? Not It's not going
Right.
to let it get any worse than it already is. They'll take the measure that they have to.
We're over here trying to do the Trump put, and then they're doing the Xi put over there. But let's see how it both end up. See what
Yeah,
it
yeah,
does
in
for
in
us.
in in the in the Trump put case, I think you were selling the put.
Yes,
It's going down.
exactly.
So
Which would have made you
here,
money. Yes,
right here, I think you're buying the put. So
exactly, exactly. The buyer, the seller. So tell me again, I've said it before. This has happened before. Why is this time different than before? And it might have more staying power because you were saying that it's more than instead of like extreme more than words, this is more than buzzwords. So what? Tell me why.
well, before, when there was, China wasn't doing great, and Xi came out and said like, "Oh, we're gonna do stimulus." It really wasn't enough to stimulate the economy, right? So there's kind of like this multi leg stool that they're looking at supporting this time, right? So one is that Beijing is ramping up the minimum wage adjustment, right? People have more money, they have more money to spend, they can spend it in the economy, pushes growth, right? The other thing is
Mhm.
they're they didn't say the exact measures, but they're doing things to stabilize the property markets. China had a big issue with people investing in these ghost cities, people investing in properties that were either not fully developed or not lived in. And so you had a lot of Chinese people kind of holding the bag in China for growth that wasn't there, which goes to another part of the stool of that they are re-incentivizing birth rates, right? They're doing away with like the one child policy, and they
Mhm.
realize that even though they may not say it publicly, that this is probably a nod to the fact that the one child policy went on for too long, and now they're going to see not a social collapse, but something probably similar to Japan, where the top aging demographic make up a much larger portion than the working class, younger people to be able to support them. And when you have billions of people, that's a much kind of bigger deal than it is when you're Japan, which you know, big country, right? But it's not, four times larger is a pretty big deal. And the other aspect is, I think, you know, whatever you want to believe about it is that, you know, China is being quite innovative when it comes to AI, right? When, we were talking about this a little bit before, is that they may not be the ones inventing it, but they're taking it and they're making it significantly more efficient, right? Like no one thinks DeepSeek was actually only trained on $5 million worth of GPUs, but it probably
Right, right,
was trained on something that it was less than OpenAI is using, right?
right.
And even now, there's very pro-China stance of nobody on the DeepSeek team can leave China. So I mean, that's kind of a nod to US that the place to go is still the US, right? If not, you wouldn't worry about them not leaving China; they would just stay there. But anyway, so there's a lot of kind of legs to this stool that are being supported this time, where before, you know, Xi kind of didn't care about equities, if you will. And maybe now he's kind of realizing that it is important for, the people, the growth of the economy, and to bring in capital. US, we just got done taping after the bell. US is down 8% from its highs earlier this year, where China's up 20% on the year in their stock market. So we are seeing a shift in things globally.
Yeah, and you said that more in the blog. You said that the institutions are now pumping money into the stock market, which that's what they do here too. They keep talking about retail investors, but ultimately, it's mainly the big guys that move the markets. Um, you were talking about DeepSeek, et cetera. In fact, there was a little story, kind of a one-off here, but so I think the next narrative is going to be robotics. Um,
Mm.
you've got the AI, which they kind of played that out. But with NVIDIA now, their next narrative is using their chips for robotics. And one of the things they said was that within China, that they got all of these bootleg chips, and they'll probably still be able to get some and buy some, but they won't be able to get enough to do what will be needed for the next revolution, which is robotics. So I guess we're going to convert over from AI to robotics, and they're going to need to somehow get better chips for that purpose. So there's your setup for NVIDIA, I guess, for their next push
Well,
up. Who knows?
so the interesting thing about that, not to get too far off the path, is that
Right, 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 right.
all of the what is it? 70% of the prefabs are in Taiwan, right? Which we
Yep.
won't go down that road, but
We're
they're
building
in
a
Taiwan, right?
TMSC plant here.
Right. And so, but who supplies all of the kind of infrastructure, if you will, to make the chips in those prefabs is ASML, right? And
Oh,
so
Foxconn's
not
involved too, right?
yeah, but I forget what it is, but there's this specific machine that's like one of the most critical pieces to building,
Yeah.
like at least when it comes to like GPUs and stuff, is
Gotcha, gotcha,
it's something that ASML makes, right? So
gotcha.
and they as well, I believe, has some sanctions against China. So not only does when it comes to catching up kind of in the chips aspect is like yes, surely they will copy Nvidia, right, and they will make something as good if not better eventually,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
But they have to get these factories up and running, and they also have to copy ASML in the development, right? It's not like you get some chips, you back engineer ChatGPT, and you make it a little bit more efficient, right? However they did that, right? This is like a bigger infrastructure play. So if you think something similar to BYD, it's like it probably took BYD 10 years to make a car as good as Tesla, but like, you know, they're kind of there now, right? They actually came out with something that said they can it made the stock pop charge a BYD in 5 minutes to like 250-mile range or something. Um, so they'll get there, but with the robotics front, once again, we might have a little bit of lead there. But that being said,
Yeah.
they are the ones making the killer robots. So I've seen that on Twitter.
Maybe literally, yes.
No, they have like the Boston Dynamic dogs with like guns attached to them.
There you go. Yeah, killer robot. Yeah, you were saying what I was saying. All right. Well, I mean, I appreciate that. I mean, anything else you want to add to it to wrap this puppy up?
No, I mean,
Anything that President Xi will allow you to say?
this isn't investment advice, but for the last few years, and I do believe this is that the US was the cleanest dirty shirt, right?
Right.
It's kind of like, well, where else were you going to put money? And like that was the narrative, and it did play out well. And go listen to our episode of After the Bell about how small caps relative to the S&P are at their lowest levels. Well, if you look
Right.
at any of the MSCI indexes around the world, China, Europe, you name it, they're all at a very similar state. And so, I can't say go put your money in China, because who knows, maybe this is just a 20% rally in the beginning of the year. But I wouldn't be surprised if you continue to see outflows out of the US, regardless of how the US does, and inflows into other economies. Because I think, you know, globalism in its sense of how it was before is, you know, gonna change, and you're gonna see other economies become stronger, and you might want to take a little piece of them. Do your own research. Like I said, not financial advice, but um, you look at history, things do pivot, and
Right. Right.
it seems like a pretty critical pivoting point these days.
Yeah, to me, it seems like AI started here, the big AI narrative, and then it jumped over there with DeepSeek, and it's almost
Mhm.
like it was planned. And then so the money comes from here to over there to help with the AI play. Because I remember when Alibaba's partnered for AI, all of a sudden that's when I think it kind of tipped this whole thing off. This last thing that actually stuck. It wasn't just a 1 week up and down, which typically had
Yeah.
been happening with China. So I suspect if it's the quote narratives and people working cooperating together to get in on things before the retail investor does that it's going to be robotics next year, and then that'll eventually work its way to China. Who knows? We'll see. But we know that China is always good about hiding what they have, and so maybe they're already there with all the things that you brought up. They actually have. They've been working on those things, and probably somebody that from America or somewhere else got paid nicely to come over there and help uh, get them jump started as well. Yeah, so appreciate that. This is going to be an exciting thing. I pretty much it's gonna be happening all year. What's the over under for you on stocks going up in China, Daniel? How many weeks?
Uh, I mean, I'll say probably barring global recession or global war. I think China is higher at the end of the year than it is, where it is now.
I I I can probably agree with you on that one for once. I mean, I think especially if the U.S. starts hurting for whatever reason with the Black Swan event, that China will become the. I mean, it's 1-2, right? So it's just kind of be interchangeable at that point.
Mhm.
It'll be interesting to see. So I appreciate you bringing up, give us things to think about, and I'll just end it here. Like she's on the rail and she's going towards the finish line. No, I won't do that. Well, sorry, you started that,
We'll,
not me.
we'll, we'll, we'll have more updates as
That's right.
the race progresses along.
Horse number 6 has finished second. All right, I will see you next week. Have a good weekend there, Daniel.
You as well, Darren.
All right, bye.